You're listening to Careers and Cocktails, Career Talk with a Twist, hosted by expert recruiter Renee Frey. Let's get this party started.
Hey party people, welcome to Careers and Cocktails. Today we have a winemaker slash law firm owner attorney on, Rob Fowler. He is the owner of Fowler Ditch LLC, a specialty law firm located in the Twin Cities, dedicated to complete representation of law enforcement officers and public employee union representation. His practice areas for law enforcement include representation of critical incident use of force cases, including high media profile officer-involved shootings, discipline and discharge cases. Whoa, sounds intense. He has 20 years of legal experience in criminal defense cases, labor law cases, including grievance and contract arbitration, 20 years of experience in administrative and civil cases. Currently, his firm provides legal services for approximately 1,000 members in the Minnesota Fraternal Order of Police's Legal Defense Plan. That's a lot. He represents a lot of people. That's incredible. And his firm, Fowler Ditch, provides public employee representation primarily as general counsel for the Minnesota Public Employees Association, 6 independent labor unions, and 1 private sector employee union. Must be a union expert over here. And recently, Rob started Fowler Wine LLC, a small craft winery in Hudson, Wisconsin, and he is the president of the Twin Cities Purplefoot Winemaking Club and is a wine judge at various wine contests, including the Minnesota State Fair. And as an amateur, he has won over 200 medals in wine contests. Incredible. And I've had the pleasure of drinking a lot of your wine. So welcome, and tell us, what are we going to be drinking today? And I'm a total amateur, but Rob is going to share more about wine than you're ever going to want to know. And I'm really excited about this.
Good. Well, today we'll be tasting one of my, this is a homemade wine, so this is not available for sale, but we will be making wine similar to this at Fowler Wine LLC. And then it's a Bordeaux blend, and then I brought an actual Bordeaux from France to compare it with. And
awesome.
That's one of my favorite styles of wine. So
awesome. And tell us a little bit more about Bordeaux.
So Bordeaux is a very famous, probably the most famous wine region in the world, actually. It's a region that is on each side of the Garonne River in France. And so it's in western France towards the Atlantic Ocean. And the wines there are primarily blends of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and to some degree, potentially Malbec or even Petit Verdot. So there's 5 noble grape varieties. Actually, 6 are permitted, but the other one isn't really grown anymore. That can be in a Bordeaux blend.
Awesome. And do all the percentages vary of those particular grapes you just spoke about?
Yeah, they do. So on the right bank, is what it's called. So the right side of the river, when you're looking at a map on the right side, those wines are typically dominated by a Merlot heavy concentration, with Cabernet Sauvignon and Cab Franc being the minority pieces to that. On the left bank, it's the opposite. They're primarily Cabernet Sauvignon heavy grape on the majority of the blend, and then to a lesser degree Merlot and Cab Franc. So they're kind of mirror images of one another. And France is very specific about its region. So in order to, instead of saying on a label, it's 75% Cabernet Sauvignon, it will never say that. What it will say is
fascinating. From
the village of Pomerol, or from the village of, and so the place names are how you determine what is in the grape, because you know that if it's from that village, that community, then it's going to have a Cabernet Sauvignon heavy character or a Merlot heavy character. But in France, they're not obligated to put the percentages on the label in any way.
Oh, fascinating.
Sometimes they do. This one we're going to be trying actually does. This is a right bank Merlot based wine, so it's 75% Merlot and 25% Cabernet Sauvignon. And so this one is a Bordeaux from the right bank. I picked this one because it's a good value wine, and it had done pretty well at one of the contests in France recently. But what's interesting about France is it's about the place, not the grape.
Right.
And in America, it's kind of the opposite. It's about the grape.
Right.
Almost always, it's going to say Cabernet Sauvignon on the front or Syrah or whatever the blend is.
Right.
So it's very different, and every country is a little different on that. Some places are more focused on the terroir, the place of origin.
Sure.
And in France, AOC is what the abbreviation is, and so there's strict laws on what can be labeled as certain wines, and it has to be from the place. It has to have certain yields of the grapes, and there's all kinds of rules. French wine law is fascinating.
Are they the most strictest of the whole globe?
I would say yes, but now that everybody's in the EU over there, they all kind of adopted a similar model.
Okay.
So European countries for sure are very similar now in their level of rigor in their laws.
Fascinating. Well, let's try it. What do you got? Let's have a taste.
Right. So this is actually unique because it's also a screw cap, which is not common in the French regions.
No, it's not. I thought they always needed cork because I love some screw top wines, let me tell you.
Well, so this one is a 2016. It's Le Mont Vincent. This is so most wineries will make various levels of their wine. So there'll be a kind of an entry level, more of an everyday drinker, medium range wine, and then of course their reserve wines they're going to be the most expensive, aged the longest, most expensive to produce, definitely aged in French oak or some sort of barrels, and you will usually have a higher end cork and label and everything else with it. So this is their entry level. This is under $20 a bottle, and I brought it as a comparison for the way that I make wines, and I think every winemaker has a style that comes through in their wines. Mm-hmm. So I don't know much more about this particular chateau other than that it's a right bank and that it's mostly Merlot.
Cheers. It smells delicious.
It's definitely more of a fruit-centered wine. It's dry. It's
definitely dry.
And I can feel some tannins. This would benefit from some aging. It's kind of youthful, actually, almost, and its color kind of comes through, and it's definitely
tell us about the color.
More garnet than it is brick red, so it hasn't been aged very long, and I don't think this wine is actually intended to be aged because of the screw cap, although screw caps can age perfectly well. It's all about preventing oxygen from coming into the wine, so that's the important concept. Is basically air is the enemy of wine.
Absolutely.
It will make wine deteriorate, turn vinegar, invite spoilage, become what we call oxidized, and so that's the enemy of wine. So it's important to have a reliable closure and a system to prevent air. And later on, if we talk about what we're doing at Fowler Wine or what we plan to do, we're actually planning on doing an alternative wine packaging that almost eliminates the air headspace in the package. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, exactly. The innovators. So you have to tell me, when a wine bottle is bad, is the term corked?
Right. So that refers to what's called cork taint, or it's a TCA. It's is the compound that causes it. It's chlorine based. So basically, if you wash your corks with tap water, you're gonna get cork taint. So that's why we don't wash our corks with tap water. In fact, corks don't need to be washed. Their process is they're sound the way they are. So a lot of times they're shipped with sulfite gas to keep them sterile. But so anyways, so cork taint makes it taste kind of like a wet cardboard, mousy flavor, and it's just, you can tell when you get a cork tainted bottle, you can tell because it will be
you can smell
nasty in the smell, nasty in the taste, and it's like drinking a dirty wet cardboard.
Yuck. I know, we've had a couple bottles, which it's rare to get. I mean, we haven't had too many, so.
Well, they say it's about 1 in 15.
Oh, really?
Can have cork taint, but again, there's steps that wineries can do to eliminate cork taint. Again, not washing corks, making sure their corks are not exposed to chlorine. Can't use chlorine cleaners, things like that will definitely reduce that. Or use an alternative like the screw cap, which is becoming more and more popular. I personally am not a huge fan of it, but mainly because it requires extra equipment that I don't need. So.
That's funny. That's funny. So what can we celebrate for you this week?
So this week was a really big week. Finally, after 2 months of the federal, state, county, and local permitting process, we received the last piece, which was our Wisconsin winery permit yesterday.
Congratulations!
So
cheers!
That was an intense couple months, and in addition to remodeling and building the winery space, which was going on about the same time. So we've had a very busy summer. I haven't had a whole lot of free time this summer. So.
Right, I know. I've seen all the posts on Facebook. How did you discover a love and then hobby for wine, and then now you're going to start selling it? Take us through that journey, Rob.
Yeah, I will. So I think it's a kind of a cute, good story. It involves my wife, Nyla, who is the one who introduced me to wine in the first place. So we were on our honeymoon in Italy. We picked Italy because neither one of us had been there. She'd been in France, I'd been in England and Ireland, so we picked there. And lo and behold, we're in Tuscany, and we're in the heart of...
Lo and behold, one of my favorite places.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best wine region,
Yes.
arguably, in Italy, and we didn't know it at the time, but we were going to places like Brunello di Montalcino, Montepulciano, which makes really nice wine there too. And we were just everywhere we went, the wine was fantastic. And what I didn't know was that wine is really friendly with food. And of course, the food we were eating was phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
So I remember the moment when I was like, the light switch kind of went on. Was we were sitting at the for lack of a better word, the castle, medieval castle in Brunello, the city of Brunello, and Montalcino, and we were sitting there with some pecorino cheese, and we were drinking. It was a brand new winery, actually, Tassi, I think it was called, and it was a Rosso di Montalcino, so their younger version, and that's what Nyla liked, was the younger ones. I like the more aged Brunellos, but it was fantastic. That combination was fantastic.
Oh, isn't it?
And I guess I really, before that I was just basically any light beer will do kind of drinker. So yeah, it kind of turned the light switch on. So for a long time, all I would drink is Italian wine. I was like, rapid exploration. I was like going to the wine shops every other day, like trying to find new stuff and whatever. And but then I think most people kind of get to this point with wine. It's a journey, not a race. So my taste, I was like, I want to try this and I want to try that, and this is this style. And pretty soon, I'm drinking white wines and knowing the difference between different Chardonnays, oaked, unoaked, and things like that. And so it just progressed, and that's the fun part about wine. Is it's whatever wine you like is the best. You don't have to be snobbish about it. Although there's good to have a wine education, because the more you know, the more you can appreciate wine. So for me, I had that starting experience, and I was experiencing more wine. And then one day in 2009, so a few years have passed, I was like, there's these hybrid grapes in Minnesota. I bet you we could make some wine. So my wife and I went over to Wisconsin and picked some grapes from a local place, and we had some cute pictures of us doing it. And that was our first batch of wine, was in 2009. And I still have some of that, and it's drinkable still. Was it outstanding wine? No, it was not. But it started, the whole thing. And so I didn't really do much for kit wine, because to me that's like cooking, following a recipe. And I like to cook too, don't get me wrong, but it learns you the fundamentals of fermentation, but in order to really do it, you have to use real grapes. And so I got a book. Is how I really learned all my knowledge, was this book by John Iverson, and it was really simply laid out. And so good old-fashioned book reading got me to learn the basics of balancing acid, sugars, and there's a lot of science in it, which goes well kind of with my background. And then there's an art to it. What style are you striving for? Are you looking for a heavy oaky tannic wine that'll age over years? That's my style of wine that I like. So yes, that's what I shoot for. So you need oak to be added to the equation. You need some other things, and so. But the main rule of thumb is, if you've got good starting grapes, the starting material is important. And so I've worked not only myself bringing in grapes from the same winery in California, and then we use another broker in Washington through the club that we've used over and over again. And the local growers, I use the same. I get my grapes from the same place, same growers. I talk to them, and they kind of know what sugar I'm looking for, what ripeness levels, and So yeah, it's nice forging those relationships as well.
Awesome. And how have you start with a book how have you gotten better and better at it? Like, how has your wine grown? And
Well, there's a little trial and error. I mean, we definitely made some batches that didn't turn out when we were starting. And, it's trial and error is a good learning tool because, very much so you don't want to ruin the grapes you paid for, and you want to have good wine to drink. But I also started growing some grapes, and so we did some of that. So it's kind of a multifaceted approach on, what we need to learn. But once you get it down, then it's like, with experience comes what you need to know. And so by doing it, okay, this works well, this doesn't work well. Like I've determined my 2 favorite yeasts. I have one for red and one for white, and that I like the best because they give me consistent results. And that was, again, trial and error.
Sure. So pure experimentation, really.
Right. And that's part of the fun with being home winemaking is really fun. And so if anybody hasn't done it, I'd encourage you to do it because it is a fun process. Even if it is starting with a kid, it's fun.
Yeah. Dustin, my husband, has done it, and it's crazy. Like, he's bottling with this cork, putting the cork in the bottles and watching the progress. It's cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I'm president of the Purple Foot Club of Minnesota, my last year. But we have 80 to 100 winemakers of all ages. I mean, we have some folks that are quite elderly down to, newbies out of college, and it's great sharing the experience of those more experienced winemakers. We're always willing to help. So if you're interested in winemaking, purplefoot.org.
Awesome.
And we'll definitely have you come, and we'll welcome you to the group. But yeah, it's fun because there's some that focus on making fruit wines, which is not my cup of tea, but
right.
I wanted to learn it, so I actually have made fruit wine. I'm probably not going to make fruit wine at Fowler Wine professionally, but it's definitely an option I can do because at least now I have the experience and knowledge from them how to do it. So.
Oh, I didn't know it was like a winemaking club. That's awesome. So there's a cool logo on the front of our Riedel wine glasses that's etched in here, and I love Riedel wine glasses. I love the glassware.
Yeah, just not to interrupt, but the glassware you choose really does help you enjoy your wine better. If you're buying a real thick glass with a big lip on it, it's gonna detract from your winemaking experience or your wine tasting experience. The Riedels are nice because the lips this is all hand blown, and so they're very thin crystal, and they're shaped right. So when you really get the aroma, it enhances the experience. But if you have a bad wine glass or a plastic cup, you're not going to get the full experience out
Absolutely. Well, and I've done a taste test where I've had a Riedel, a Lenox crystal, and a Target wine glass, and you really can taste the difference. These are made for a specific varietal, and it's phenomenal. But tell me about the label and...
Sure. So we've been kind of planning a winery for some time, and so people would ask me, well, what are you going to call it? And I really hadn't made up my mind, and they'd say, well, do you have any Fowler wine? And that's just kind of what stuck. So we went with Fowler wine, and my last name means bird hunter, so we went with a hunting theme. So in color, this is blaze orange. Everything's blaze orange except for the firearm, which is in gray. And so it's a hunter's vest and a hunter's cap with the ear flaps. But people have always told me, I like your duck logo.
It actually does look like a duck.
It does look like a mallard duck head, which is fine that it's coincidental like that.
Absolutely.
Because then it more kind of goes with the whole hunting theme. Which,
Absolutely.
Let's be honest, we're in the upper Midwest. We're in Wisconsin. I mean, people hunt. And so I think that this will be a nice, unique label that not everybody's. It doesn't look like everybody else's, and it's just kind of unique with the bright orange and.
Yeah,
so.
But it's won an award.
Yes.
Tell us about...
So my wife is a graphic designer, and so she had done up these labels, and so we submitted it to Winemaker Magazine's annual label contest, and it's an amateur publication for amateur winemakers, and she won the grand prize with this label, and so we definitely decided to keep it. So
that's fantastic. Are we going to try your wine now?
So we've tried the Bordeaux that actually is a Bordeaux now.
Yeah, and it was actually not as complex as I thought it was going to be.
Well, and that's probably because, again, it is their entry-level wine.
Oh, got it.
So
okay.
I would expect that to be the case. This would not be considered an entry-level wine. This is
Perfect.
This is aged 2 years in French oak barrels. So it's a 2017, and it's a blend of. This one is roughly 45% Cabernet, roughly 33% Merlot, 22% Cab Franc, and the remainder is Petit Verdot, which is a very dark, inky grape, and it gives it a nice dark color. In comparison, just visually to the other, when you look at it, this has got more of the brick red on the edges than the purple. So it has been, and that's from spending time in the barrel. You get slow. There's two kinds of oxidation. There's the good kind and the bad kind. The slow ingress of oxygen will help a wine age gracefully and will turn the color slightly to that brick red. But whereas, if you leave this bottle out for 2 days with that much airspace in the bottle, it's going to turn to kind of have a foul taste because it'll oxidize.
Sure.
But that's the rapid oxidation. This is the slow, because slowly oxygen comes through the barrel staves, the heads, and everything else that a barrel's made of, and it will slowly impart oxygen into the wine.
Well, let's taste it. Oh, that's delicious.
Yeah, this one I just bottled it about a week
That's
ago.
dry too. I love dry. Oh my gosh, that's good.
Yeah, this one has got very silky integrated tannins. So if you drink enough of your teeth will get that coating, which is something I like. But it's definitely a smoother drink than the last one, I think. But in terms of its overall
Right, it's delicious.
Palate feel.
So I just realized it. Wine bottles, red ones, tend to be darker tinted. Is there a reason behind that?
Yeah. So typically speaking, wine that's meant to be aged, you don't want to expose it to light.
Okay.
Because light will also ruin wine. The ultraviolet light interacts with it, and so typically you'll find almost all red wines in a dark green or what this is antique green. It's actually brown, but that's what they call it.
Sure.
So they're darker to absorb that light.
Cool. And you brought something. What did you bring?
Right. So I brought, just for fun, because I know you've talked about champagne on your show.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a couple of examples of champagne in process and finished. So this dirty bottle, it looks dirty, but you can see all the yeast that are floating in there.
Yeah.
So champagne and sparkling wine, and in America, I should also note, we cannot call my red wine, for instance, a Bordeaux because it's not produced in Bordeaux. You can't even use that name at all. And in America, unless you're grandfathered in, some of the old California wineries are, you can't use the word champagne. And in fact, they use the words California champagne. So you can see all these particles of yeast.
Yeah.
It looks disgusting, right? So champagne, the reason why it's so darn expensive is it's a very difficult wine to make, and it's very labor intensive. So this is some homemade sparkling wine that I made. I forget what even this is because I don't actually have it labeled. But so this is still being fermented in the bottle. The fermentation is actually done. But as the yeast decompose in the bottle, so you lay it down, and the French have caves full of stacked bottles of champagne.
And are they all, they're not corked?
No, so the reason the shape of a champagne bottle has this lip and the little rounded edge
I never knew that.
You have to put what's called a crown cap on them, and even the French will do this. So it's bottle capped so that you can keep the gas and air trapped inside. But ultimately, you need to get this cloudiness out of the wine. So what you do is with this cap on, you put them on a giant rack, is the old-fashioned way, a wood rack at an angle, and every day you come through and disturb it, twist it, and rotate it
by hand. This is going on by hand.
Yep, it's called riddling, or roumage in French. And so you turn it an eighth of a turn, and then every day you repeat that process. And then as you go around, the yeast will slowly start to collect and spiral around the bottle, and then you change the angle of the rack to get it more towards vertical, and eventually you're left with a very little bit of yeast settlement, and it's clear like this. And what then needs to happen is you can age it longer if you want.
Yeah.
Usually it'll be aged point down like this then, in the cases. And then you need to freeze the neck so that there forms an ice plug. And then you carefully turn it up and do what's called disgorgement, and you remove the crown cap. Now it's pressurized from all that fermented trapped gas, and it shoots the ice plug
it does
into your neighbor's yard. And it's really a fun process because that ice is under a lot of pressure and it shoots it right out. But then you're left with clear champagne or sparkling wine, and so this is as clear as it can get if done properly. And so this is what I did by hand. So this is the finished product. I actually don't like to cork it's to me it's a little extra step.
Oh, so you don't have to cork champagne?
No, you don't. And in fact, Prosecco's not usually capped with a cork. There's a lot of them that have the still have the bottle cap on.
Now, the mystery of why there's a lip on the champagne bottle, I never knew that.
Right. The whole shape is for the process, because even this neck, this part that protrudes, that's what catches in the rack so it doesn't fall. So that's the fun engineering part behind wine is there's usually a reason for all the shapes and things that are going on with wine, and champagne's really a good example. So
absolutely. So tell us about your goals with Fowler wine. Like, you're just getting started. How exciting!
Yeah, we've already frozen 5.5 tons of grapes because we didn't have the license when they came in, so we had to juice and freeze it. But we'll be fermenting that as well, and so we have a couple different things. I mean, what I really want to do is make craft wines that are as hand done as possible. There's some machinery that's needed in the winemaking process, but we're talking 60 gallons at a time in a wine barrel. Some of these batches are going to be that small. And so really want to pay attention to the details and really just make the style of wine that we want. And my wine profiles, I like a complex, full-bodied red. I like dry. I like tannin. I am not a fan of sweet reds whatsoever.
Me either.
I will probably not make one. And a balanced acidity, long aftertaste. That's the kind that would go well with food, steaks, things like that, grilled meats. That's the style of wine that I like. And there's a big grape industry in Minnesota, Wisconsin, with the hybrid grapes. And the problem is that, and there's some good wineries, don't get me wrong, that are doing great things, but the problem is the starting material, as I said before. If you're starting with really high acid grapes that sometimes struggle to ripen, which means lower sugar, there's a certain profile that these hybrids produce, and I'm not a fan of it. And so I am going to make some hybrid wines, but I'm probably going to blend a lot of that with traditional vinifera grapes. So part of my time as a home winemaker was spent finding different blends. What goes, like there's a local grape called Frontenac, which is very acidic but very purple. And it can ripen quite well into the high sugars. So basically, I've tried blending Frontenac with everything under the sun. And I've tried bench trials, small batches, and I found a couple favorites. So we are going to blend some Frontenac with some traditional wines. So we're going to use some of the local grapes, but probably not have it dominate the profile. Because I like wine that's an international style wine or a West Coast style wine on the high end side of things. The entry-level California wines actually I don't particularly care for too because they're kind of jammy and fruity.
Sure.
And actually a lot of wines, believe it or not, contain residual sugar, which is disgusting to me. So I just don't like sweet reds.
Tell me about residual sugar.
So, well, you can add the sugar back, which is what a lot of wineries will do, is they'll back sweeten their wines to make sure that it has.
Oh, fascinating.
Because sweetness does sell. I mean, it's a fact.
Well,
people like sweet
right.
things.
They do, not me.
and it's an easy profile to get into. But you can also make sweetness in a wine, for example, if it's a dessert wine. So you can leave sugar because your sugar was so high to start. Your yeast will die off at a point. They can only struggle past about 16% alcohol by volume. So if they die, there will be sugar left in there. So there's a lot of the dessert wines are naturally occurring sugar in the wines, and we probably will make some dessert wines at some point. Right now, I want to focus on big full-bodied reds and whites. We do have an idea for some alternative wine packaging. People around here in the St. Croix Valley, a lot of people are outdoor enthusiasts, boating, camping, and so we are looking into doing an alternative packaging that is, I don't want to get too in depth, but it is going to be bottleless, corkless. You won't need the corkscrew, and it's going to be practically garbageless. So it's going to be a really cool deal to be able to put it in your cooler.
And environmentally cool. Like, everyone's conscious about the environment now as well.
Right. Nowadays, you have to take your garbage out of the state parks. You have to take it with you. You can't. So, yeah, bring it. And sometimes it's discouraging because, we're wine drinkers. We want to drink wine when we go camping or boating, but it's like, well, we got to bring the corkscrew, the bottle.
Right.
So we have in the works. In fact, it'll be in our first year's production and we'll have it all announced on the website when it's going. But we definitely have that planned. So we're going to do some nice whites. So we're going to do Pinot Grigio. We're going to do Chardonnay, Riesling, and a little Sauvignon Blanc. And we will do one white wine this year that is a pure hybrid. We're looking at doing something with Itasca, which is the newest hybrid grape. And it's the wine that I've had so far has not been as hybrid-like. So it's more like regular wine. So I think Itasca has some promise. And I might blend that with a little La Crescent, because La Crescent's very florally. It does have a good nose. I mean, there are pluses and minuses to almost every grape and varietal. So it's like just knowing what to work with and to get the product you want out of it. But sometimes the wines that are made in the upper Midwest tend to be sweeter wines, because sweetness will balance that acidity or mask it. And I don't like overly sweet wines, so I do tend to gravitate towards dry, food-friendly wines, and mine will hopefully be in a little more balanced than some of the sweeter acidic wines that are out there.
Perfect. It's going to be all the wine I want to drink.
Well, you know where to find me.
I know. So this is your second business venture.
Third, actually.
Oh, third.
Yeah, I started. My first law firm was Fowler Law, and I was as a solo, and we grew into the point where we needed to. I took on a partner, Joe Ditch, and so Fowler Ditch then became, and now we have employees and the whole bit. So
yeah, and then Fowler Wine.
So
going back to the attorney, put your attorney hat on for a minute. What is it like when you think back to when you worked for a firm? What do you do to prepare for an interview?
Well, so in the law field, it's a little different, because there are some specific things that employers are looking for, like did you clerk for a judge? What's your legal experience? And a lot of times in law school, it's hard to get legal experience. You need to have a clerkship or an internship, and not everybody gets them. I mean, I was fortunate enough to have clerked for 2 different county attorney's office, and so that was good experience going in. So the schools don't help you get these? No, they do. They have internship programs, but again, there's just not enough for everybody to get. Right. So, you have to sometimes work in the mailroom. I mean, whatever you have to do. Yep. But I was lucky where I was working for the Hennepin County Attorney's Office for 2 years, and in Rochester at the Public Defender's Office before I took my first legal job. So I think it's good in any profession, but in the legal profession in particular, having practical experience is really, really important. Absolutely. So experience is key. And good grades are great and everything like that. And sometimes that's what you have to rely on. But good work experience can outdo good grades any day. So absolutely. So when you're hiring for your team, what's your favorite interview question to ask? Well, I was really fortunate. Every employee that I've hired, except for one, I've known beforehand. And that's so they didn't interview. So it's all about who you know. Well, I was just going to say networking is pretty important. All right. For the other gentleman, I did ask some interview questions. What their goals are too, because I think one of the things that I would look for if I was going to expand again is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Because if you're here for a transitional, I'm probably not going to invest in you. Right. So I like to know the goal. What's your big picture goals? What do you envision doing? What are some things you like to do? For as small as we are, it's really important everybody get along. And, absolutely. And it just so happened, we certainly didn't ask these questions, but I mean, I knew that my partner Joe had young children about the same age as me, and so did my paralegal Vanessa, and so we were kind of all in the same boat family-wise, and so we knew that we were all going to experience the same sort of things, kids getting sick, and all this stuff. You know, so for us, that was a real good fit. But in larger places, that's where your expertise comes in. Is really knowing what to groom yourself for on your resume and hiring. Absolutely. And that's why you're the expert on that field. I've gotten really lucky in the sense that I didn't have to do a lot of that. Right. But it goes to show, though, with you knowing all the people that you hired for your firm were in your network, how incredibly important it is to network. I say that to every single person. I'm like, the number one way to find a job is all through who you know. Well, yeah. I mean, in Joe Ditch's case, so Joe and I both went to MIT. He came from Minnesota, I came from Iowa, and we joined the same fraternity. And to this day, I talk to people from my fraternity in Boston every week, sometimes every day on Facebook. I mean, so it's important to keep a good network. And mine happened to be nationwide. Well, Joe, for the longest time, was working out in Boston. Yeah. And so he decided that he wanted to go back and change careers to law school. But he did that in Minnesota. So when I heard he was coming back, I'm like, hey, buddy, if you're looking for a job, I might have one for you. And as he graduated, sure enough, that's the first job he got right out of law school. But it was good because we knew each other, could trust each other, and had that relationship. So networking is ginormous. I mean, and if the more activities you get involved in, fraternal organizations, community organizations, social organizations, even the winemaking club, the more you know, the more knowledge you're going to gain, experience, and somebody can point you in the right direction. I don't think there's a service or thing that I can't find that I don't have available on my network.
Oh, absolutely. You're definitely the go-to guy. If I need XYZ, like, Rob, who do you know? Who do you recommend? All the time. How do you stay connected with your network, knowing they're all across the nation? Do you have some sort of intention or?
So, it's nice that social media can keep us connected. So, if used right, I think Facebook, and I really only do one. I mean, I have a LinkedIn account. I don't think I've opened it in years, but then again, I'm also not looking for a new job because I'm where I need to be. But, Facebook is what I primarily use. It's nice to keep connected, to know what's up. I also keep involved in the organizations. Like I said, I'm in the Purple Foot Club for the wine, and you meet people along the way, and just sending somebody a note on email sometimes works, just to say, hey, what's new, or text.
Absolutely.
And just through friends of friends, we end up probably finding somebody that has the answer to whatever question that we need.
Absolutely.
And so what's been fun about keeping in touch with everybody, even though I graduated over 20 years ago, it's great to stay connected and know what everybody's up to, and look at people's families as they grow. And so for me, being in a fraternity was a really good idea. And I think people kind of give those fraternal organizations or sorority organizations a bad rap. They've changed so much from when I was there.
Yeah.
They really are more geared towards professional development, personal development. I mean, when I was 18, I didn't know everything and wasn't mature enough to do everything right. And those places will help you grow as a person and professional.
Absolutely.
And so I would just encourage people to not discount those kind of things, because they make a big difference.
Right. And when you put yourself out there and you're involved in Purple Foot, then you meet other individuals and doors just open.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, even things like, playing poker. We used to have a poker group that we would just get together once a week or whatever. All walks of life come through those groups, so it's great to be connected with not just, like, for example, I know some people in the law profession, all they do is go to the bar association things. I'm not even a member of the bar anymore. I mean, because frankly, it wasn't doing the networking that I needed. I'm in such a specialized field.
Right, absolutely.
That I already know all 10 of the other lawyers that are working in that field. So, I mean, it didn't really do that for me. But I would say venture out of your professional zone a little bit, because that way you can get exposed to other things and other perspectives, and a broader net will yield you more fish. So.
Absolutely. What's one piece of advice that you would give our listeners on careers or?
Well, I think there's two things I would say. Planning is pretty important. Nothing is going to happen overnight. If you think that a decision can be made quickly, generally that's not the best way to get the best results. Having the most planning and forethought into what you're doing, so that you can anticipate what may come down the road. Planning is good. When we opened the winery, we moved to Wisconsin in part to be in a state that has different wine laws, because, like I said, the style of wine I want to make, I would have to blend 50% Minnesota grapes if I stayed in Minnesota. So we knew that we would have to move. So this was a multi-year process of what do we need to do, and so it's good to know kind of the checklist of, this is what's going to make this plan work, and know that it probably is not going to be an overnight thing. Not just one thing. It's going to probably be a series of little things that get you there. The other thing I would say is, in terms of career decisions, you have to follow your gut on what you like to do, what's the right decision. Some of these decisions, like for me, the decision to leave a law firm that was doing fine in a lot of respects was a difficult one. Do I take what little retirement I had saved and venture out? Well, for me, it was the right move. And my gut was telling me, yep, it's time to go on your own. And follow what you love to do. So the wine thing developed as my wife exposed me to it, and as time went on. But I don't want to give up Fowler Ditch right now either, because it's a great practice. I love working with the police. Joe's a great partner, and Vanessa's a great person as well. That we work really well together. So it's not something I want to give up. But on the other side, I really wanted to follow what really is my true passion, which is winemaking. And so,
Awesome.
So I just found a way to do both.
You can do it both. I love it. You can do it all. Where can we find your wine?
www.fowlerwine.com. And again, as part of planning, I've had that parked in reserve for about 3 years. So,
of course you have.
fowlerwine.com. And we're planning to sell direct. So, Wisconsin law does allow you to sell direct through the internet. So that's a good place to go and to get our wine. But, we hope to work and partner with the local distributors so that we can be in the shops here, and especially for the alternative wine packaging that we have coming up. That one I really want to see in stores.
I can't wait.
So you can grab it when you're on the way to the boat,
Exactly. So. Well, fantastic. I'm so glad to have you here.
Oh, it's been fun. Thank you.
Yeah. If hiring leaders to grab a copy of my strategy on how to find the best employees, go to careersandcocktails.com for job seekers to find out where you can purchase my published book, I Hate Mondays, to help you with your job search. Go to the same website. And if you have enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell so you don't miss an update. Cheers!
Cheers.